And ready.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. May God come to our assistance, so Lord, make haste to help us. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son,
Son, to the Holy Spirit,
as it
was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
So I was talking to Brian a couple of weeks ago, or talking to some clients of mine a couple of weeks ago, and I've been looking at the Feast of St. Nicholas. And when looking at that, it's always kind of important to find out, when we look back in history, what's kind of going around as far as the backdrop goes. In 303, Emperor Diocletian created an edict on the Feast of Terminalia. He was the pagan god of demarcation, pagan god of terminals. So this dividing line and this dividing line, and what power that dividing line has. Anyway, he makes a decree to begin persecution of Christians. And that was kind of what's called the Great Persecution. There's persecutions before that. We know that with St. John and other saints. But he makes that decree. So from 303, and then he has so he's emperor, but there are 4 Caesars under him. Galerius is the one that kind of creates the real deal with the decree on that. And he's kind of the backdrop on pushing this persecution. So that happens, and that goes on, and Nicholas is in bondage under Diocletian. So the question is, well then, we kind of all know about, it's kind of a big drop-off point, right, is 313, right? Emperor Constantine, he makes the decree of Christianity becoming the official religion of Rome. But there was something that happened before that, too. So obviously there's tremendous persecutions that occur. Well, in 311, Galerius, so Diocletian is deposed after 2 years. So 303 to 305, he's emperor. But he says, I'm done. I want to go back to my vegetable garden. And there's lots of epitaphs about, he just keeps talking about, if you only saw my cabbages, you would understand, that this is a lot better than possibly getting executed as the emperor of Rome. So, a pragmatist, and it's kind of in that direction. Now, there's a lot of horrible things he did too. But anyway, so the next thing is that Galerius becomes emperor in 305. And when he's emperor, he still allows for, and he kind of was, again, the one that set up these persecutions to Christians. So he can't really just, drop his own ruling, but eventually he does in 311. And he makes these claims about the perseverance of faith. Ultimately, Christians' ability to persevere through these persecutions was really kind of the main backdrop on why the Romans why he said, okay, we're going to back off. There are probably many people that pleaded and saw things, but so that occurs. So eventually, Nicholas is released out of that persecution. 311, and in 312, he's released. No longer is Galerius the emperor. Constantine has a opportunity. And when he takes that opportunity, before that, he has a vision before a battle. The vision before the battle is that he would conquer under the God of the cross. So he conquers under the God of the cross. He has this vision. I'm assuming it's the Blessed Mother. I know there was a woman that came to him. I'm not that versed on who exactly, but I'm assuming that. And that we could probably go back and look and see who that is. But when he has this vision, he does conquer in the name of the cross. So when he conquers in the name of the cross, he declares now in 313 the God of the cross is the God of the Roman Empire. Well, that's great. Christian persecution, it kind of, on the backdrop, it's like, well, who is the God of the cross? So we find out that the God of the cross happens to be Jesus Christ. Well, if you're someone who's in charge of something as large as the Roman Empire, well, and you kind of make that claim, well, there's a lot of order involved in trying to make that type of practical claim. So eventually it comes to the point of, well, what is the belief of the God of the cross? So at this time in 313, there are Christians and they're being persecuted, and some people think why, and there's a lot of myth about cannibalism. That's one of the things that was kind of put out there as a false teaching. We can't allow the point that there's communal property. That kind of really offended this component of terminus. That your land is your land and my land is my land. But those people that are Christians, they kind of share everything, and that's not the way that we do stuff. So there's these points of division in relation to the practical functions of living and how they're honored out in faith. So in 313, Constantine makes a decree that Christianity is the major religion of Rome, and there can be other religions, but it is an acceptable one, and to him it is the best one because it helped him conquer. Well, just like anything from a political human nature standpoint, people want to follow on with the lead power if they have the opportunity to. Well, when that happens, there has to eventually become this kind of clarification of, well, what is the official teaching of the Christian faith? What do they say? Who is this God that I've claimed as a victory? So at some point, Nicholas is let out of jail. So at some point, they kind of get together and make a decision, and Constantine says, I'm going to call a council. So the Council of Nicaea in 325. Well, the deal is that with that council, we become kind of a discussion. There are bishops, approximately between 250 and 325 bishops are there. 1,800 are invited. Every bishop could bring his guest. He probably could bring one or two, priests or deacons or somebody along with him. Obviously, back then, times and condition of travel were not just easily expedited. So if you're going to come from England, from Britain, right, you're going to come all the way to Turkey, where the Constantine's council occurs. I mean, it's an arduous trip, and it takes a little time. So he probably had the intention, in 314 to say, look, let's get going and let's have this council. But, first that word's got to be disseminated out to the whole Roman Empire, and then it's got to be gathered up and traveled to Turkey, by foot, or by chariot or whatever they had. So anyway, it's going to take a little time. So that's kind of where the time lag occurs of an official decree in 313 and 325. Like I said, during that time, Nicholas is released from prison. And so Nicholas is there at the council. He's a bishop in Myra in Turkey. So kind of convenient for Nicholas, he gets to go and attend that council. One of the things that was going on, though, what is the what is itness of the council? What are they really arguing about? What are they really trying to define? For a long-standing tradition, one of the concepts that we really, monotheism in Judaism, right, is kind of is a unique thing in the ancient world. Greeks, Romans, Persians, everybody kind of practices this polytheistic approach to God. But the Jews kind of stick out in the sense that they have one God. Well, in that concept, Christianity is also trying to explain that we have one God. One God in what, though? In three divine persons. And what is the nature of Jesus? So these things have been in relationship to his relationship with God. The Greeks end up having a concept, the concept of one in being. Homoousios is the term. So one in being. Well, that's a hard concept for everybody to kind of really come to terms with, you know. I mean, I can share a cup of coffee with you, or I can be betrothed to my wife, but I am the point of one in being. We are together, but we are separate. But what we're talking about, when we're talking about God now, we're talking about God that is together, but also three persons. So it's complicated. People don't really have a full grasp of it, and they really don't have a full definition of what that means. So one of the errors that kind of crept in colloquial teaching was by this guy named Arius. So Arius, he starts to teach that Jesus was one with God, but created by God. Well, that doesn't sit too well with Nicholas. So during the time of the 325, the Council of Nicaea, Arius is talking his stuff, and he's saying that there was a time when Christ was not. That infuriates Nicholas, because the understanding of the truth of who God is co-eternal. You know, one in being with the Father is what we utilize as a concept from Nicaea. Well, Nicholas gets so mad that he gets up and he smacks Arius in the face. Well, you know, when you do things like that in the place where the Emperor of Rome is called a council, it's not going to fetter too well for you, you know. You're making these outlandish, creating kind of a tumultuous situation here where we're trying to bring unity in the understandings of the decree so that I can go out and tell everybody on a postage stamp or on a short card, well, what is the official religion of the Roman Empire? You know, I've got to deal with other people in other worlds that don't have anything to do with this. And when I go and conquer, well, I'm going to conquer with my religion also. They're going to follow my rule. So I need to know, and they need to know exactly what that rule is in a short, concise way, long enough so somebody can read it and everybody understands it and it's clear. And you guys are coming in here and punching each other in the face. Well, I don't really appreciate it, Nicholas. You're going to jail. So Nicholas got out of jail. Nicholas goes back to jail. Nicholas is in jail now. He's in jail, and he's having a hard time with this situation. You know, I mean, if you think about that, it's kind of a crazy odyssey of during the whole time of persecution. I've kind of get this stay, and I'm being persecuted here, and it's a terrible situation, but I get to live. So there's a reason why I get to live, and I've been the bishop of this church, but I'm still living, and I'm still getting the opportunity to proclaim this gospel and to proclaim the truth of it. Well, here I go and do it amongst my friends, and now I'm in prison. What a frustrating deal. He's fought for this faith. People around him have died for this faith. It is obviously something that he's passionate about. It's obviously something he's wanting to drive home to people, that this God that we have is one in three and co-eternal forever. He is the creator, and he is one in three. While he's in jail, he has an appearance from Jesus. Jesus comes to him and asks him, he says, "Nicholas, why are you here?" And Nicholas turns and responds back, and he says, "It's because I love you, God." That's an important concept, right? He doesn't say, "I love you, Jesus, created of the Father." No, "I love you, God. You are God." Well, in that, the tradition goes that he received, when he was imprisoned, he was thrown in prison. But before that, what happened? He had the basic two signs that a bishop was a bishop were that he had a gospel. He had the 4 gospels with him. And then he also had his vestments, right? His stole. Well, those things are deposed, and they tell him to get out of the council, right? So he's taken his gospel, and they've taken his vestments, and they've fettered him. Well, so when that happens, when Jesus Christ appears to him, and he tells him, he says, "I love you, God," God returns the favor and gives him his love through the form of giving him the scriptures. And also the Blessed Mother appears to him and returns to him his vestments. He receives the gospel, he receives the vestments, and he's also unfettered. Well, from a practical standpoint, if you're the Roman soldier that has to guard this situation, okay, so he's got a book and he's got some clothes on that he didn't have. And now we don't know how that happened. But the problem is, you've been unfettered. Now, as the Roman soldier, what happens? Well, I'm in a huge bind. I have no option but to do something about it, because I swore allegiance that if the emperor told me to do something, I'm going to do it, or I'm facing death. He's in a bind. Nicholas has a kind of conversion with that guy. That guy is bold enough eventually to come and talk to the emperor and get the message back that, hey, look, you need to find out what's going on with Nicholas. Nicholas has been unfettered by God. He said he had a vision. Jesus appeared to him, gave him the Gospels, and the Blessed Mother gave him his vestments back. Constantine hears this. He says, that's good enough for me. Let him back in the council. Well, that's an aghast point, The fact that he's able to enter. So, there's a guard that deals with the bishops and their meeting and their dissension. Well, guess what? He's able to walk in just like everybody else. Everybody knew that he was gone, right? He had been fettered and he had been taken by the Romans and put in jail, and that's just kind of the way it is. The council is proceeding. Well, Nicholas shows back up. To the shock and obviously kind of confusion to the council. They reopen this concept that Arius was kind of erroneous about. They're completely erroneous about that Christ was not co-eternal. At one point, what I've heard is that about 2/3 of the bishops were going in that direction. And the religion was going to be formulated. They really couldn't come to terms with the concept that one in being with the Father was something that they could really teach. Until Nicholas's return, and obviously the council comes forward, and we have that in our Nicene Creed from here to this day forward. Some other things about Nicholas, So one of the things, he's not going to be kind of there's nothing really jolly about having to stand firm like that, He becomes the patron saint of Russia. And the Russians don't really view him in the same light that we do from an iconography. The icon of the American concept of Santa Claus and St. Nicholas is really kind of turned a little bit in the modern world, has turned into something that is definitely not going to be somebody that's going to stand that firm with you. It's going to be genteel to the level of permissiveness. And that's kind of what ends up showing in relationship to the jolly man that is concerned about just parties and indulging in a lot of extra food, or potentially a lot of times too with the rosacea in the cheeks was kind of some extra wine, was kind of the approach that a lot of the modern world has kind of tried to show us that that's what Nicholas is. But in truth, he is a warrior for God. He stands for strength. He stands for truth. He stands for perseverance. And strength, truth, and perseverance, those Christian virtues are what are really honored on December 6th. And in doing that too, he also makes the point that he is willing to go through a lot of sacrifice for those things, and a lot of patience, and there's a lot of humility in it as well. The ultimate component of why he was released was because of his what? Because of his love for God. Which, even though those strong things happen, he still has an understanding and compassion in his heart to love God and to serve him. And hopefully he's still blessing us with good things in that sense. In regards to the gifts with Nicholas, the story is that there was a man in Turkey, in Myra, that Nicholas was wealthy, his father was wealthy, so he has the ability to go around and give good gifts to people if they one person in particular that was in need was a man who had 3 daughters. He was going to potentially have to sell them into slavery because of the problems that had occurred for him financially. The man had given up hope, he had given up faith, he didn't know what was going on, he was down on his luck. Well, Nicholas comes to him and says, hey, let me help you out, but he doesn't do it affrontedly. He goes and puts some coins inside the window. When he puts the coins inside the window for the first daughter, she's kind of receives this opportunity to have a dowry now. What does that do for the man? Well, it begins to restore his faith. He is thankful to God